We're live.
What's up, everybody? This is Bill Foster and my lovely wife, Malika Vaughn Foster. And today, it's a very important day. It's a very humbling, exciting day for me. I have two doctors that first are close to me because they're my cousins, which means the world to me. But their knowledge is impeccable and their vast experience is just second to none. Today we have Dr. Marilyn and Frederick in with us today.
Hey.
You know, out here in New York City, I don't know if they do it in the DMV area, at 7 o'clock, they always clap for the first responders. So Malika and I are gonna clap for you guys today.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So today is all about you guys. I want you to enlighten the audience and the listening party just on anything that you want to share with us. We know we don't have you for a long time, so people, if you have questions, write them in quick, and we're going to get into it. So first and foremost, doctors, how are you guys doing first and foremost? If you're frozen, they might be frozen, but that's all right, they'll be back. We'll see. As you can see, they are with us today.
They're frozen with a smile, right?
Exactly. So the doctors will definitely be chiming.
And advising.
Exactly. Keep talking. That's all right. Where everybody's back now. That's it.
Popular program.
First and foremost, they're thinking about opening up the city, the country. Before we get into that, let me ask you a question, both of you. Is there anything new that we're finding out about this coronavirus that people don't know right now that you've heard on your side? Go ahead, doctors, and either one of you.
I think what's new is that we don't know anything.
Right.
And lots of times we get people who come on the air and they'll say, this is the truth. It lives 9 hours on metal, or it's not in the air. Then we say it is in the air. So this is one of those things that one thing we do know, that certain people, and we can't figure out who, will get this and die. If you have comorbids, that helps. There's diabetes, high blood pressure, any of those things. And that's the scary part. It's not like catching a cold. You get a cold, give it to somebody else, 99% of the time you're going to survive. With this one, we don't know that somewhere between 5 to 10% of the population will die, which means that we keep getting new data, but that data keeps changing. And I think we've gotten to the point now where we're saying protect yourself at all costs, because we really, really, really don't know.
They call it a novel coronavirus because it's very new to all of us, no matter how seasoned or experienced the doctors are. This is new. One thing we have noticed that in young people, it's causing strokes. It's causing what we call emboli, which are clots. So that's strokes, that's embolism, different things that it aggravates the whole blood system. Of course, we know that you see where pneumonia has been the hallmark, bilateral pneumonia, and you're coughing, et cetera. We've talked about that. We've talked about some people who happen to even go on a vent due to their respiratory distress. But we also don't realize that a large percentage of those who are COVID with the virus and are asymptomatic and or don't have a fever. So, you know, we're left to believe, oh, if you don't have a fever, you're okay. But that's not so. And here in the DMV, we're seeing folks sit home, say, well, you may have it, but it's mild, and 2 or 3 days later succumbing. And if they make it to the hospital, they're on vents.
And to that point, when you talk about it, something we call vasculitis, which means that this is inflaming the blood vessels. That's why we're seeing, whether it's in the stroke, whether it's in the kidneys, whether it's in the lungs, because your blood vessels are everywhere, these things are getting inflamed and causing all kinds of different presentations.
So, you know, what they're trying to do here, okay, well, I don't know, let me talk about Stacy. Stacy was on one of the shows. She's asymptomatic. She went and tested. She did the 14 days, and she was stayed in the house, quarantined herself. She went back and then retested and came up positive. People are popping up like that again a lot more. Are you finding that out, that people are still testing positive without anything, like, and they're trying to follow the procedures?
That's where Dr. Fauci keeps saying we've got to test more. See, when you're only doing the minimum number of tests, that is, you look symptomatic, we test you. we're going to assume you go home for 14 days. You're going to be cleared because most things clear in 14 days. Now that we're testing more people, we're now finding out that, oh, that doesn't mean because you were 14 days that you had to clear it. And so that's where, as I said, the data's changing. And just because you don't look like you're sick, don't mean you can't be a carrier. So like having a strep throat. Some people have strep throat, they have no problem, but they cough on somebody else, they get heart problems, throat problems, kidney problems from it.
Doctors, let me ask you a question. Like you were saying earlier about the young are catching strokes.
Right.
What does that cause from, or is this just something that is affecting the young because they think they're superheroes, they're immune to this?
You know, it's interesting. We don't know in general the hand that we're dealt. And when I say that, no matter how old you are chronologically, you have no idea how old your lungs, your kidneys, your heart really is, depending upon what you've done, what you've been eating all your life, etc. So with that, you could take 3 40-year-olds. One may look 30, one may look 40, one may look 60.
Yeah.
So on the outside, then on the inside, who knows? So it's difficult because initially 2 months ago, we were told the vulnerable. Okay, sure,
Right.
we know that those who are in nursing homes have issues.
Right.
We know that they can't get up, they can't fend for themselves even physically, let alone their immune system. But we now realize that it's not just the elderly, it's not just the folks who have comorbidities such as hypertension, etc. You have some young folks who come to work. We had a young person here at our hospital who was a radiology tech, fine, doing x-rays, etc., was exposed, was coughing for a few days. He's in his 40s, he's dead. He died. So it's like you just don't know. And here in the DMV, right here in Prince George's County, we have been tagged and identified as a hotspot. And it's the wealthiest county for African Americans, and we know disproportionately African Americans are succumbing to it. Our increase in the positive test, out of 3,000 tests, 700 were tested positive. That's 30%. And then you have those who are clinically showing signs in the hospital or home quarantine, and then some.
Doctors, let me ask you a question. Initially, when the COVID came out, we just heard about Caucasians and Europeans and people like that, or Asians getting it. Then all of a sudden, people of color have superseded all expectations in the negative.
Yeah.
Like, we just found out in St. Louis, all the people that I think majority that passed away with the COVID-19 are all African Americans. In New York City, the numbers are astounding of people of color that are dying with the COVID-19. We just found out also today, 2 million people in New York have probably tested positive with the COVID-19 and don't even know that. So basically my question to you is, how did all of a sudden we come from where the mentality was at first, well, people of color are not getting it. Now we're the leading people that are catching it, if that's something that you can answer.
Well, you got to remember, when it attacks white people, everybody's looking.
Right, right.
So when they started dying, everybody was looking like, wow, something's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we've all of a sudden come and passed. It's just that they weren't looking for it.
Right.
Now, when all of a sudden so many, now this is where mass testing and illness comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
At first you had 3 or 4 people on the unit. Now you got 15 on the unit. That's what's happening.
And most people in service jobs are folks of color. We are the ones that are in the cafeteria. We are the ones that are cleaning, doing the janitorial services at the hospital. We may be the tech. So we may be in a restaurant. We had a young lady who died. She was in a grocery store. She worked in a grocery store, the store that is our neighborhood grocery store, and she caught it. So, we are the front line of services as such. And so unfortunately, and we often don't have those jobs that you can work from home. We rarely have those jobs that you can work from home.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times, what do you say to the people that, we just looked at a video in Chicago. The people are just partying, like the young are partying like it's just like.
It was a house full of young people just Jammed together like sardines.
And then we got Atlanta. They're opening up. Where you know certain other cities are opening up. I just, what do you say to people about this that think that it's all right just because the 45 says, hey, wait a minute, to open up the city back, open it up? What would be your recommendation to that?
Well, you know, you got two things here. One, you got economics, and second, you got health.
Yes.
Okay. The economics, those who are in stocks, those who are counting the money, see that money has significantly been going downhill.
Yes.
So they are making decisions based on economics.
Right.
They know it's going down low. They are trying to stop it. And so you're going to get this, oh, it's okay now because the economics has gone down so much.
Yes.
Those people generally are not that concerned about what's the health issue. And you see, we've already identified the fact that we have the most comorbid situations. We're dying at higher amounts. Do the math. Save the economics, who's going to get sick? And of course, all youth have that problem. And it's not just a black or white thing. That's the whole thing about getting old. You get old, you start figuring out, yo, my buddies are dying. That means there's a few people in line.
Yeah. We don't want to do that. Exactly.
Yeah. When you're young, you figure, ain't nobody died in my group. So they have that sense of, nothing's going to happen to us.
Right.
And so it's very hard. I mean, I always tell people that if this was a test, nationally, we have failed it.
Yeah.
They come out and say, we have a very serious illness. And people in this country said, and?
Yeah.
And one thing I wish that it was looking like leprosy. You know, I think if we had it so visibly, identifiable, then we wouldn't have this problem. The fact that it is, you don't know, it's invisible. People don't want to be shut in. And what Fred was saying, economics, yeah, but those same people who are opening up those chain of stores, etc., the ones that own it, they're still at home. They're allowing you to go out there, but they are still at home watching the stock go back up, etc. And they're not having to do the, the nails and the tattoos and the restaurant and trying to get the tips, etc. And sometimes, as I had my radio show on Saturday, and we were live right there in Atlanta, and the doctors today and tomorrow are backing the mayor, Keisha Bottoms, because he didn't even know. And they're like, we're going to still see the spike go up. And a life is a life. And some people don't value some lives as other lives, but I feel that that's still a life. And to add to that and the dangers, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think, I just speaking to the youth or anybody out there, Malika and I, we took a walk and we had all the precautionary measures in the hands. And, some people still don't get it. Old, white, young, black, they just don't get it. Now, recently, you have a question or I'm going to go into another statement?
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So a friend of ours, I told her I would pose this question for her. She lost her sense of taste and smell, I guess about 3 or so weeks ago. And like us, she's an allergy sufferer, but the taste and smell disappeared and has only slightly come back. So she's been doing smell therapy, I think it's called, where you just, try to smell different scents. Is that common of COVID, or is there something else that she could do to make it come back sooner?
It's common of COVID. And I say that, but you can have anything from headache, loss of smell, loss of taste. And that's why the old fashioned, a couple of shows ago, they said, get your Listerine, the old fashioned Listerine, get your hot soup, you get your hot lemon, to stop the effects that COVID has on the entire oral mucosa, meaning your taste, your smell, the upper, and then as it descends into your lungs. Now, well, let me just say, I'm not going to say your friend. People who have coronavirus, who begin to lose their taste and smell, eventually they have antibodies. Eventually, if they're, not the ones that transition on, will resolve and the smell and the taste will come back. And then down the road, lab work should be done in terms of blood work to establish whether or not she has antibodies. Now, let me also say before I forget, because I know time is limited, even when you have antibodies, we're now realizing, and the discussion is that does not mean that you're protected. And that does not mean that you won't get it again. It's almost like getting the cold again or getting the flu again. You may not have it as bad as, you know, the next person who's brand new to the virus, but that doesn't give you the protection that we one time thought maybe a week ago it would do.
Okay.
Doc, let me ask you a question. For the people that don't know, can you, either one of you, elaborate on what antibodies are and what they do?
Well, your body has a way of protecting itself. And part of that is your body makes these little, we call them proteins, that go out and fight stuff that could be harmful to you. Now, sometimes they get confused and they attack your body, then you have what we call autoimmune. But these antibodies, their main purpose is to get rid of viruses, bacteria, or other things that might be harmful to you. Now, sometimes the antibodies may attack things, but they don't always attack the correct part of the bacteria or virus, which is just as Marilyn was saying. You might form antibodies because your body was exposed to something, but it might not be the antibody that protects you.
Right.
There's a whole lot of different systems. There's your complement system, which are some other things that helps your body. You got certain white blood cells that eat up bacteria. So some of these other things might be responsible for you recovering. And so, although they're talking about these antibodies, until we've had really good tests to see whether or not the ones that you formed are the one that's going to protect you. Just because they're there doesn't mean that they're going to be protective for you.
Interesting.
You have a question?
Go ahead.
Okay. We just had a friend question. We heard that, which has been a big joke, that this guy in the White House has been talking about taking disinfectants and Lysols and all kind of other nonsense, right? But on a serious note, first, please, when you get a chance, elaborate on that. But then we have a question on, can you explain what they're talking about with the UV lights and the means of disinfecting that virus from the surfaces? So, I mean.
Yeah. Well, this is where you have to be careful with what we call anecdotal knowledge or anecdotal information. That is, you know, you're walking down the street and you fall. Does that mean there was an earthquake? No. If there was an earthquake and you fell, you could have fallen from the earthquake or you could have tripped.
Right.
That's what's happening. We do know that, let's say, Lysol or disinfectant will kill bacteria on surfaces. But we also know it can be toxic to your lungs, liver, and kidney.
Yes.
So if you take that same Lysol that, quote, killed the bacteria on the surface and put it inside your body, it also may injure your lungs, kidney, and liver. And so
I'm going to tell you something too. It's so funny. I'm going to let you continue, but after he said that, there was I forgot the percentile of in New York, that increase that people got.
I think it was like 30 people.
Got sick. Like,
Like, why not? Right, exactly.
just hit your head against the wall, assholes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Must have been an earthquake. You know.
And I guess they figure it'll burn, so that it'll burn. They may as well eat fire. It's gonna burn the virus out.
Yeah. Exactly. I guess they said, "Fuck it, I voted for him. I might as well follow him all the way to hell." You know what I'm saying?
And the other interesting part, the UV light. There's different kinds of UV lights. We have used UV lights for cleaning surfaces.
Yes.
And we do know that it can kill bacteria on surface, but it's harmful to the skin.
That's right.
We do know the sun puts out UV light and it causes skin cancer.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it kills bacteria, but it can also cause skin cancer.
Right.
And some of them do nothing. So there's so just because they said UV and it did something,
Right.
okay?
So basically he's giving out half information on, he's talking about something that could be effective for one thing, but not right for the other. Basically.
Outside of the body, effective outside of the body.
Yeah, exactly.
But within your body.
Furniture.
So one of our viewers originally tested positive on April 1st, and then April 15th, she tested negative. So how soon after that should she be tested for the antibodies? Is there a time frame to wait?
Well, the antibodies come in two different schedules. When you first get sick, your antibodies go up very high.
Right.
Okay, and that's one kind of antibody. As you've been ill for a while, the second kind of antibody, which is usually a little more protective, comes in later.
Right.
And so there's about a 2 to 3 week span for that second one to come in.
Okay.
Okay. And so sometimes if you take the antibody test right when you get sick, going to say, yeah, you have antibodies, but it doesn't mean it's the right ones.
Right.
Even still, the ones that come out are not a guarantee.
Right.
Nor do we know how long these antibodies, when they come out, are they going to stay around.
Right.
Okay. And so, you know, we got these tests. This is the first year out. You've got to be careful of the stuff, even that the folks at the top are saying, because they haven't had a chance to sort of run this through the mill to say, oh, that was a good idea. It didn't work.
Yeah.
Right now, they're doing everything.
Everything is at an experimental state right now. It just,
Right.
everything is.
And I want to also say, just like what Fred said, you know, let's compare it to having mononucleosis, which is a virus, mono.
Right.
And you're really sick, you have abdominal pain, you're lethargic, etc. When we draw blood, as we diagnose mono, when we draw blood, we see what we call the brand new antibodies called IgGs, the immunoglobulins, etc. But you're not protected yet. And then you can have had mono 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, coming back from college, and we're like, okay, let's test you. And then they can tell you, as my patients often do, well, you know, there was a time I was lethargic. I was, you know, I didn't know what I had, thought I had flu. We draw the blood and we see where the second stage, I call it the second generation of antibodies that were there that now protects. And you can see where it had mono, all done, patient is much better. Then you see the telltale of the antibodies that show where you now, and those antibodies will stay because that's your new set of helper cells or your set of antibodies showing where you've had mono.
Wow.
The other thing I always tell people is that the tests right now, from the medical perspective, our biggest problem is that we can't rely on these tests picking up everything.
30% false.
We have what we call a false negative. The only good test right now is a positive test.
Right, that's real positive.
If it's positive, you probably got the COVID virus. But if you got a negative test, it doesn't say, I don't have it at all, or I've never had it. Because some people can have it, do the test, and it's negative, but it's still there and you can be spreading it. So you have to be careful that you say, I got a negative test, I'm okay. No, it just meant that test says you were negative.
And then you have a false sense of security and walking around.
Yeah. You walk out there thinking you won the championship and
right.
That's right.
Right.
No, I was just thinking it's interesting because as they're talking about reopening the country and people going back into the workplace and okay, we have documentation that we tested negative, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So
that's right. And the big problem with that is if you get a false negative and you run into one of those people who are sensitive, they can get sick and die.
And we've seen that in family members where someone with a false negative and they're really positive go home and, you know, they may have a grandmother there or a child. And we just had a case where the mother died, then the daughter who had brought everything into the house, she ended up dying. And now there's a 60-some-year-old man who has lost his wife on Saturday, last week Saturday, and lost his daughter on a Tuesday.
Oh my God.
Right.
I want to ask you a question before Malika reads a question. I've been hearing about, I have a friend now, I have two friends that I worked with that when they went to the hospital, they kind of put them in a seduced coma. Is that correct? Am I saying that correct? Yes. Please explain what does that do and why do they do that?
That's when they put you on a ventilator. And what happens when they see that you're having difficulty breathing, we call it a medically induced coma. Mm-hmm. And they give you medicine to take. It's like the Michael Jackson metoprolol. We take you down because you will end up, what's the phone? You'll end up having a, excuse me for a second.
It's still a married couple, right?
Too many phones.
Okay. Anyway, so when they're about to put you on a vent and they putting a tube down, if you're not in a medically induced coma, you're gonna fight because it's like choking. So you're like, so you won't have this, I'm fighting because you got this tube. It calms you down and the vent breathes for you. And until the oxygen requirement is less and less as they wean you off. So it's important, very important that you are subdued while they're helping your lungs, helping you stay alive, helping your lungs aerate so that you alive, oxygen to your brain, lungs, perfusion, etc., air, so everything else is working. as you improve, as they're giving you the medicine, etc., and breathing for you, and your body is recovering from the COVID-19, then they wean you down. And we had 2 cases where then they wean you down and your oxygen requirement is less and less and less, and you come out of it. So it's important. So that medically induced coma is what saves your life while you're on the vent.
Well, yeah, because I meant to say 3, and one guy, he finally got up. Supposedly, they took the tube out his throat, and he's kind of talking or what he's doing. And the other 2, one's showing some signs, and we're still praying for another one.
Right. Right.
So we've heard that there are different types of tests for COVID, the swab and the nasal passage, and I think a throat swab, and obviously the blood tests. Is one test more reliable than the other, or are they all pretty much about the same?
Right now, the reports they're almost about the same.
Okay.
All of them have a high degree of what we call false negative. And so when people do test, that's the big question you always want to ask. What is a false negative? Because if they do a test and they come out with a new 5-minute test, but what's the false negative? You might get a 5-minute test. If you're positive, that's a great thing. But if it's a false negative, it didn't help you.
Right.
Okay, and so we'll be, this is America. We're a commercial country, so we're going to be coming out with new ideas. Okay, yeah, everybody's competing. This is big money because the guy that comes out with the best test, they're going to mandate everybody gets it, at least 2 or 3 of them. Mm-hmm. How much?
Yeah,
big money. One of our viewers asks, "Are they putting people on ventilators too soon?"
I think so. Now I'm gonna say this. Last week, they had a discussion, because once you're on a vent, a lot happens, and a lot can happen. And sure, it's breathing for you, but now we have this thing where we're turning you prone, we're turning you on your tummies, okay, and we're helping that. If you think of your lungs as airbags, and everything's right there, your ribs, your chest, your heart. So when you're prone, when you're on your tummy, that helps the lungs open up. It may sound crazy, but it helps the lungs open up, because laying back here, things are falling down on your lungs. Okay, so when we position them and then still helping them breathe and monitoring that, it's apparently with COVID, being that they usually see the alveoli, which are itty bitty air pockets, lower part of your lungs, is where it likes to go in terms of infiltration, bilateral pneumonia. Turning the patient prone may prevent them from having to go on a vent, and less hospital stay and less morbidity. Not so much more time, morbidity. So they are now beginning to first try that, because you're in respiratory distress. First thing we know is the ABCs, airway, breathing, etc. So we go, oh, you can't breathe? Your oxygen level is only 70. Oh, you got to go on a vent. That's our reflex. That's our knee jerk. But now we realize that these patients, perhaps 30 to 40%, if you turn them and they're prone and you help them breathe and turning them, and with a little tilt, it helps. And then I've always said, as my husband always tells me, I'm Dr. Nebulizer. I'll be telling you to be on the neb, opening up those lungs, and that helps as well. But anyway, yeah, they're beginning to realize everybody, even with the respiratory distress, doesn't require a vent.
And the other
let me ask you a question. Go ahead, Fred. Go, please.
The other thing is, that shows how things change.
Yeah, right. Real time.
You come out, somebody can't breathe. The best thing you can do is breathe for them. Mm-hmm. Then when you find out that what you're doing, breathing for them, is damaging them more, now we know that's not the best thing to do. I usually want to not let you get so bad that I think you're not going to recover. But sometimes the things that I do to help you might be moving you back farther. And so that's why the whole rationale has changed, again, because we've done more patients.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you, because it seems like there's a protocol, and, shortness of breath. It seems like they just throwing them on the ventilator. Like, wait a minute, you went straight to the 10 instead of going to 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
I think that's is that just your personal opinion, if you can Monday morning quarterback, that why do doctors do that, or whomever does that? Why do they do that so quick? Because
the first thing that I'm worried about is your brain. When I worry about your brain, I worry about oxygen to your brain. If I let you lay there and breathe halfway and your brain gets damaged, what are you going to say when you wake up?
Oh,
That's right.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
That's why
hard.
when we see somebody in respiratory distress, I want to do something to help their respirations.
Right.
Now, it's just like in newborn babies. We breathe for newborn babies who actually do damage to their lungs,
Right. Right.
but we save their brains. It is only after we go through some patients that you kind of realize, well, maybe we should let them suffer a little longer without intubating them, because we might be doing some other damage.
There. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like some people are different. Yeah. Case by case situation. But the bottom line is, like you said, you're worried about the brain, because if oxygen doesn't get to the brain, correct me if I'm wrong, then that's when we have a problem. Malika has a question.
So this is in regards to natural remedies. And I know we've talked about this before, but this is about vitamin C, zinc, sea moss, elderberry. A lot of people are surviving COVID, right?
I know, yeah, most of them.
Okay.
Well, let me do mine. Let me do mine. She's going to take over on that question. All right.
So what are your thoughts on those?
We got two big issues here. One is you don't know who's going to do bad.
Okay.
So you might not have going to be the person who's going to get bad anyway. That's one thing. The second thing is pretty much all of our medications come from herbs.
Okay.
I mean, everything we use comes from some kind of either plant or some kind of an animal or something we've used, and we've sort of, quote, purified it down. And when we talk about eating herbs and spices, it wasn't really herbs and spices for flavor. It was actually part of the healing in the body that you were taking that for. And so the concept of taking herbs really isn't new.
Right.
And just that some of our knowledge of which herb is good, which herb is bad, has gone by the wayside because we've got them all in a bottle now. And nobody listens to grandma when she says you should use this plant or that plant.
Yeah.
And so, yes, those things that you talked about.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I know, Marilyn, you was waiting to get in on that one.
So Big Pharma has, I guess, turned us to a whole nother thing of, we have all these pharmaceutical medications, et cetera. And as you were talking, most people, in the beginning, for a while, it was like, oh, I got a cold, so I must have to call my doctor for an antibiotic. No. Allow your body to do its thing to help fight naturally. And that's going to be your herbs, your lemon, your honey, your zinc, your elderberry. Now, we do know that this COVID comes through the nasal passage, between your eyes, your nose, your throat. And that's why something as strong as the old-fashioned Listerine, the zinc, the goggling, before it gets from here to there, because it's respiratory borne. You're breathing it. It's not going to jump off a table to you, but those really fine, mist and airborne droplets will get in your airway. That's why we're wearing a mask. Now, what can get past the mask? And the mask is only for us to protect other people. Rather, we're protecting the other people from us, and vice versa. All right. Now, what you want to do is to make sure that those things, those natural things, you do take the vitamin C. Most of your naturopathic doctors, as well as your conventional doctors, are going to tell you that helps your immune system anyway. But let me say this, and I always want to say this: when you have your headache, when you have your fever, when you have your body ache, those are the triads of what we see with coronavirus. Do not take Motrin. Do not take Advil. Do not take Aleve. Do not take Naproxen. Because what that does, it may take temporarily the pain away, but it will add to the aggressiveness of coronavirus.
Let me just ask you a question, both of you. So as doctors, when somebody comes to you, I guess there's different levels, as we see, about low, moderate, like what is that 101? Like it seems, because now what I found out, I've heard, is that there's new symptoms coming. So it seems like there's just new symptoms coming every day, I guess, for the different age groups. I guess we're still talking about, pre-existing conditions for the elderly, or the people, just not even elderly, just people in our age bracket that, if you're diabetic or you have a low immune system. We have a friend, asthmatic. We had a friend yesterday. She has a low immune system, but she worked in a hospital. But she says she covered up all the time. So it's still got it. So they're saying that you know, I think the governor was coming out with a chart on how, like, I guess time frames on if it's on metal or this or that, you know, is
Right. 6 hours.
like anything you can elaborate on? What have you hearing? How long it lasts on something or it doesn't last on certain things?
Well, I think that's why I said in the beginning, this data's changing.
Right.
And as you start getting more people getting ill, you start seeing the true face of it. When you only have a very small population and you start making a statement saying, this only affects old people. Well, if you had 50 people in the study, and of those 50, 25 of them or 30 of them were old people, you might not have gotten the young people who would get it.
Yes.
Now that we're getting hundreds of thousands of people getting it, we really have a better picture of what this illness can do. You kind of notice it first in those, you know, your signet group, the folks that first kind of show you there's an illness going on. After you get more people, then you start seeing it. So I think we were lured into a sort of a false sense of security because it was a small group of people. Those who were most prone got sick and died first. But as you get a larger population, you start seeing that it doesn't just affect those, but it's a bell-shaped curve of how it affects those other people. Now this curve is getting bigger and you're beginning to see how it affects, how it presents. You know, do infants get it? Yes, infants can get it. Yeah. Not very many of them, but an infant can get it and an infant can die.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one viewer asked, if you have asthma, is taking I'm going to spell
albuterol.
Thank you. Is that safe? Thank you.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, that's my question. So if you have asthma, you are on something called albuterol, which is a bronchodilator, which is a big phrase to say it keeps your lungs open. So people who have asthma, what happens, they have what we call restrictive airway. They start wheezing, they get tight, they get chest tightness, etc. Inhalers and nebulizers opens up the lungs. As it's doing that, it prevents you from having what we call a status asthmaticus, an asthma attack. Well, remember, coronavirus attacks your lungs. So those who have asthma should make sure that they have their albuterol all the time, using it as if this is flu season, and it is, as if they're pending an asthma attack, and they might be. Because again, what has saved at least 2 or 3 of my colleagues, they've had a nebulizer, even though they weren't asthmatic. I've given them nebulizer, and I call it the poor man's vent, because what it does, it opens up the airway. It opens up not just the upper airway, we're talking your lungs. So those asthmatics, make sure you know where your nebulizer machine is. Make sure you know where your inhalers. Don't wait till you're down to the last pop before you get it refilled. Call your doctors. I know we are doing a lot of telemedicine. We too are, but the first medicines we are filling are those asthma medicines, the albuterol, the Flovent, the different ones that helps the airway from nasal passages on.
Interesting. So someone also talked about different breathing techniques help increase your lung capacity.
Yes. Yes. You want to comment?
Yeah. Any time out of shape is not a good thing. Okay. And by doing breathing exercises, you're actually improving your ventilation.
Lung capacity.
Okay. They've already said that obesity is a comorbid condition. Well, it's comorbid because it leads to other problems.
COPD.
And so if you're doing things, whether it's walking, breathing exercise, you know, running, they just had a doctor on TV who was in his mid-60s. He got a very, very, very bad case of COVID. And the only reason they say he lived.
He was on a vent.
Yeah, the reason why they say he lived is because he was a marathon runner.
Wow.
That's right.
So he had the residual area in his lungs that he was able to respond and recover from it. If it were not for that kind of residual where he had been doing exercises and sort of opening up his body, he wouldn't have had that room to improve on.
And let's mention the elephant in the room. So people who smoking, stop smoking, no matter what you're smoking or vaping.
Can you say that one more time for the people in the back?
Okay, people. That's what people.
But not in the back of this house. But not the back of this house, but just
you know, because some people like, man, you know.
Because we got friends out here that, you know.
Right. Oh, this is okay. It's
cigar. Yeah.
Right. No.
From past, exactly.
I'm not trying to rain on the parade of the economics of the cigar shops or whatever you guys call it, or the vape shops. But I'm telling you, if ever there's a time to love your lungs, to preserve your lungs and your airway, this is the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We've been preaching it. With regards to having a fever, how high is too high? And should you just let your body fight it off, or should you take something to get rid of the fever?
Well, you know, fever actually is your body's way of fighting off illnesses, because most germs have a little area that they like to live in. 98.6 degrees, certain pH in your body. And so all these things that your body anticipates you staying right there. So what your body naturally does is it picks up something's foreign here. I got something going on, and it raises the body temperature to try to make that bacteria or whatever the pathogen is not live well in your body. Now, the problem is sometimes the body is kind of like trying to fight off, and it starts raising the temperature up to the point that it becomes harmful to the body. And so I usually tell people temperatures that are 101 or below, I try not to medicate for those.
Okay.
When you start getting 102, 103, then you probably should look at some kind of medication for it for it. If you start getting 104 to 106, now you're talking about seizure problems. Your brain can't handle but so much fever.
Wow.
So,
that number again, repeat that again, Doc.
So we're talking about 101 or below, you probably should not medicate. 101 below, leave your body alone, monitor the temperature. You want to monitor, because if it goes from 101 to 103, that is, now you need to talk about medicating, okay?
Tylenol, extra strength Tylenol.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, drinking cold water doesn't help you.
Okay.
Yeah, some people, taking cold showers.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
now, if you want to put yourself in the ice bed, that might make a difference.
That might do something for you, exactly.
But, and then when you start getting to those temperatures that are 104 and above, you now start getting into seizure areas. Okay, so that's why I said when it first started rising, it's helpful to the body for fighting off infection. So if you lower it right away, you've gotten rid of one of your first lines of defense. After it gets so far, now your body's fighting but is losing the battle, and now it becomes harmful to you.
Is that for both adults and children?
We're a little bit more cautious with children because children tend to not handle fever as well as adults do. Okay. And so children can, we start getting 104 and above in children, they tend to have a seizure a little easier. Now, if your temperature goes up to 105, 106, almost anybody can have a seizure.
Right. So that's a little danger zone right then and there.
Right.
Let me ask you a question. As Malika looks into countries talking about opening up, still, are you advising if this is all these people that are looking right now are your patients right now? This is in your office, and somebody says, "Well, Doc, what should I do? Should I go out there without the mask, or should I still wear the mask? What the hell should I do? Because I'm kind of stupid." You know what I'm saying? So can you help me? And I think I might have okay. There you go.
I'll do one and let Marilyn do it. First of all, I tell people, wear the mask so that hopefully the people who are not wearing the mask will feel funny and start wearing masks. Unfortunately, when you wear a mask, it's not really to help you. It's to help the other people. So we get more people who feel like I need to wear this. Somebody out there is a false negative. And that person can be spreading this out. Will be spreading out to other people. If that person will at least wear a mask, it'll decrease the chance of them coughing and speaking their germs out. Yes. Now, the masks you need to protect you, I mean, you got those smoke masks, the little filters on the side, and
that's a lot of movie, huh?
That's the level you have to go to help you.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is, we don't think it's that dense of a population of the virus right now, so you really, really, really don't have to do that. But if I can get people to at least not have it open in the air, That's the first point. Okay, so you need a sense of public health. How do I try to protect the vulnerable people? Because one day, one of those vulnerable people is going to be somebody you know, love, or yourself. Okay.
Just before Marilyn comments, before Marilyn chimes in, we was told today that 1 out of 4 people are going to have the virus. So it's almost like 4 people in a room. One of you got it.
Right.
How crazy is that? Go ahead, Marilyn.
And I think one of the things that we tend to, just human nature, if we're out and then more people are out, then our defense and our social distances is going to be less and less, you know. And even though some people feel that this have heightened the alarm to shelter in and you know, go to grocery stores and even at the ATM. I started to do a video today. I was in line going to the bank and on the sidewalk with these X's, and then next to the bank was like music, and people were like in line doing this, you know. This would have been a good, you know, you go this way, you go this way, etc. You know, but meantime, when you see folks and they're, you know, serious about the mask and serious about the gloves, and the teller is hardly trying to give you your money, you know, and you know, etc. Then that gives you that high sense of alert. But when you have things open and you're hanging out, instead of distances, you're getting closer and you're slapping 5 and you're hugging, you know, and it gets more exposure, and all of that practicing social distance goes down the drain. And the reason we didn't follow the model that said 100,000, 200,000 or whatever, because we took it seriously. And the predictors at Hopkins, they didn't think that we would take it seriously. But now with things opening up, in my opinion, too soon, you know, it's gonna reverse, or it will erase the behaviors that people did as a prevention.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like Malika and I think, you know, you say God looks out for babies and fools, but I think there's a lot of fools out there and there's a lot of babies, because the bottom line is, what we're experiencing is we're still coming in, we're wiping down.
Right.
You know, we're even wiping off our gloves. We're doing all the precautionary measures from what they said from the, I'm not going to say from the apex of this, because we don't know what's the next half of this.
Yeah, you want to live, you know.
Yeah.
And one other thing was, you know, you just like, you don't know. And this is still, they're saying July, May and June, and I'm chief of staff at a hospital. And I was on 2 calls today talking about, we opened up 300 more beds. We have folks in the hospital who are social admissions, like they go in and they don't have a home, and we have social workers, etc. We're opening up a whole building in the city for the homeless who are positive for COVID. You know, and it's like, but they're not symptomatic, but they need to get out the hospital because we're going to have some symptomatic. So it's like, okay, this is this group, this is that group, this is this group. And it's a lot of shuffling of positive COVID that we're trying to keep out of the city, because they look fine, you know. So, but if they're homeless and, you know, you walking up to them, or they walking up to you, et cetera, to your window, et cetera, you know, you are exposed. You have no idea where you're exposed. You have no idea. And one of the things I saw today, a patient who's a 1-year-old, and she came in for a physical, she's healthy, and she said her daycare is open, because there are some daycares that have to be open for the essential workers. Okay?
Really?
So there are some daycares, like home day, that still have to be open because the essential workers got children. And you may have a police officer, you have a nurse. So she was telling me, I said, well, you know, I said, don't send your child there. She said, we're fortunate to be able to work from home, and we're still paying the daycare because, you know, they have a budget, but they're not sending her because those essential workers, they come home to those kids too.
Yeah, exactly. I have you for a few more minutes, because I know you have another at 8 o'clock. So I'm watching the time for you, because I don't. Big cousins, y'all the big cousins. I ain't gonna get in trouble on this shit. I see you on Capricorn somewhere. So go ahead. Malika has some comments and some questions real quick, and then I want y'all to send us out with some words of wisdom. Go ahead.
Okay.
So does hand sanitizer disinfect vinyl gloves? Does it cross-contaminate?
Disinfect vinyl gloves. Get a new pair of gloves.
Right.
Save all that shit, right, Fred? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Don't be cheap, whoever. Now let me stop.
Wash your, I'm a hand washer.
Right.
Right.
You know, because washing your hands is the best.
Yes. Suds in for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, such like you're going to surgery. You're going to have, you know, your hands are going to be a little irritated, but soap and water beats hand sanitizer. And make sure you keep your hands out your face. People have habit, etc. You know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, you don't need to do all that. It's like
Yeah.
keep your hands out of your face. And that's the other reason.
Exactly.
That's the reason we wear the mask, to protect you from your own dumb self. You know,
Right.
to
Right.
put your hands all in your face. Okay.
All right. Should we put taking temperature in place as a precaution and early alert?
Yeah.
Yes and no. If you have a fever, that is definitely an alert.
Right.
No, we now know that people can have COVID and no fever.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. Sure.
So someone said this change in behavior, social distancing, will be difficult when the churches reopen. Hugs and handshakes are habits.
We had a friend of mine. I'm gonna let y'all say this. I had a friend of mine we just saw over the weekend. He said, "Listen, he's an usher in the church." He said he don't know about ushering anymore.
I know. Well, you know, that pastor that's in Virginia that said God is bigger than coronavirus. Oh well, he gone.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
God gives you common sense, and he died. And it's like, okay, I guess he's worshiping Corona, because you know, it's
Yeah.
and his wife and child, you know. So it's like, come on, we have to use some sense. And the churches, I will say, many of the large churches in Atlanta, they decided to stay closed.
Malika gonna read a comment from a lady who has it. Her and her husband have it, and then we're gonna want y'all to give us some parting words. Go ahead.
Okay.
So she saw a post that says, if COVID was affecting our youth population, your parents and grandparents would do everything to protect the younger generation at all costs just to save their lives. This younger population needs to have the same mentality in protecting their parents and elders.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Because we noticed that the youth will go out and act up and come back in the house, and they're not going to be the hygiene that we do. You know, they're not going to take off their clothes at the door and take off their sneakers. They're just going to go in and lay on their bed with their clothes. So I know it's that time. Doctors, please give us some parting words of wisdom. You know, I love you, my cousins, but thank you so much. We can come back in a month, and you let us know when you're available, because I sure don't want to take your time up, because I know you're out here trying to make the world a better place. So just give us some parting words.
Well, I'm going to give you a parting word that's going to upset you. You know, coronavirus is not a rare virus. Every animal has a coronavirus.
Right.
The problem that we don't know is, does this particular virus have another host?
Oh.
Can it live in your cat? Can it live in your dog? Cats have already become positive. Tigers have been positive, which means that if it can find another host, even though we might get better as a population, if it lives in another host, it can always, as Dr. Fauci, that's why he's very careful about saying it's not going to come back.
Right.
He knows this is an animal virus,
Okay.
which means that if it finds another host in our area, it can stay in a low population and then come back again. But don't hurt your dog and cat. Leave them alone.
And don't throw miles away. And look,
He's snoring over here.
so
He got something. I don't know what he got. He got something. This little rascal snoring like he's 6 years old or some shit.
leave it alone. But
Go ahead, Marilyn.
what this will do, and it's making me think again, even down to becoming more of a vegetarian. We hear about the places, the porks, etc. So we may want, after a while, this coronavirus, be it in animals, we may not be eating, as his brother says, he don't eat anything that had a face. So we may not be, eating anything. So that's my party word.
That's some shit. They got that face. You sit down and say, Listen, in a month, we want to see you back in a month. We will be speaking to you, of course, in the meantime, in between. Exactly. I love you guys.
All right.
Social distance.
Oh, if you get a chance, yeah. If you get a chance, I'll tag you in the post in your leisure time. There are people that have questions and comments. You can go back and comment on it. You got a lot of love. Thank you.
Thank you much.
Thank
All
you.
right.
All right.
Bye.
All right. The doctors are leaving. But we just wanted to chime on them and just say thank you all for listening to the doctors. They definitely shared some good information with us.
Yes.
Please take heed to what they were talking about. You know, you guys definitely have to do part. You have to be due diligent on your own. Malika and I can bring you the information, but if you don't want to do anything about it, that's on you.
Yeah, please spread the word. We were talking about that the other day. Like, people pass things around. I mean, we all pass jokes and different stories around, but we would appreciate it if you would just spread the word about Real Talk Chronicles. And
that too, yeah. Which is most important, like I said.
Putting together a nice schedule of informative guests.
Who are we having tomorrow?
Oh, the teachers. The
teachers in the front line. They'll be talking about how it is teaching from home, things of that magnitude. Wednesday, we'll have the men in quarantine. We'll just have some brothers. The men's round table. Just some brothers chopping it up and kicking on how they're dealing with this. You know, the lost ones, loved ones. Friday, I got a legend coming through.
I was going to say it shouldn't be a surprise, but I think you told them already.
Yeah, I got some other legends I'm working on. But I have a legend coming through, Mr. Reggie Wells, legendary DJ. He's been playing since 1970. For you other guys, trust me, I'm trying.
You can't just say Reggie Wells.
No, you have to say legendary Reggie Wells. Just like you got to say the legendary DJ Hollywood and the legendary DJ Red Alert, who I'm definitely working. I want you guys to come in. For all the people that are watching.
Wait, what about the legendary Bill Foster?
Yeah, that's true. That's true,
You know,
exactly. Yeah, and as I am yours, you know what I'm saying? Because we make a dynamite team.
Yeah.
So please, if you want to be part of Real Talk, just hit his inbox, Malika or myself. Just let us know what you're feeling.
For any suggestions for topics.
We have some things that we're really trying to work on. My man AJ hit me with some ideas that I definitely were already in the works, but I am going to work on and maybe put forthright and upcoming. It's like May is already here, the schedule. So, I mean, we're just trying to do everything that we can to be informative, not just about COVID right now. COVID is the prominent situation, but we can talk about anything that happens newsworthy. We are definitely about it because it's Real Talk. That's what we do. That's what we bring to you. I applaud you. Please, if you like it, share it to somebody. Knowledge is key. That's all we're trying to do is spread some knowledge and be informative couple that we are, you know, in memory of my parents who this is all for, and in honor of them, that I'm true to who I am, and Malika has joined forces with me to make a dynamic couple. So please, I ask you, I really do, to share it to your page so people can just see the information. Because listen, some people are not able to call and contact their own doctors. Yeah, I brought 2 doctors to you. And I don't have to tell you their credentials. You can Google them themselves. Yeah. You know, my cousins, and they are my family. I will brag about them, but they run the DMV area. So, and you know, they're world-renowned. They're doing their thing. Like I said, the credentials are impeccable. So they do this. I join her show. She joins our show. And, you know, we're really happy for that. Is there anything that you would like to say before we leave, darling?
Yes, I love you. And thank you. So funny.
I love you too.
Thank you for starting us back up again and having me by your side. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, really. Tune in. Like I said, tomorrow we have the teachers. That's going to be an interesting show. Wednesday we have the men's round table. Friday we have legendary DJ Reggie Wells. Unless something pops up, we won't have anything on Saturday, and then Sunday we'll see what we'll be working out. Yeah, we took a break on Saturday because we're walking now. Also, expand your lungs. Get your lungs out there. Yeah. Walk, exercise. Get stagnated in the house where you're not doing anything. Please get out there.
I think I'm gonna start going up the steps, just a couple flights up and down.
Yeah. I'll see y'all later. Thank you.
Bye.